Welcome back to another episode of Behind the Burger, our podcast by the New Mexico Beef Council. I'm Caroline Romo, and I am here with Ross Foster of Corralitos, right? Yes, Corralitos Ranch here outside of Las Cruces. Will you introduce yourself and kind of tell us your background?
My name's Ross Foster. I manage Corralitos Ranch. I'm a fourth-generation cattleman, third-generation cattle feeder, and we're right here in the heart of southwestern New Mexico, outside of Cruces, like you mentioned, doing our best to raise beef cattle.
Yeah, well, and I love the story you've told us now. Now I've made you tell us a couple times, but the story of how you guys ended up with this ranch here.
So my grandpa built a couple feed yards in Southern California in the Imperial Valley, and they would buy their animals at the stockyards in Fort Worth. And halfway between Fort Worth and Brawley, California is Las Cruces, New Mexico. And this ranch was available, so they purchased it so that we could rest our cattle before we took them the rest of the way to California to feed them.
I think that's a great story and a really neat thing that even when it was purchased in the 70s, there was a thought. It was purchased for the care of cattle.
That's
it was
correct.
So that the cattle didn't have to drive 16 hours.
That's correct.
Yeah, I mean, that goes to the heart of probably your family and how they treat cattle. Let's give them some rest. Let's do this.
Absolutely. Happy cattle produce better. You don't want to stress them out. And we're obligated to do the most we can for them.
Oh, absolutely. Economically, ethically, all of the words. So tell me about kind of your background. Were you always in the family business, and kind of what's the path that got you here?
I grew up on a feedlot, which was we raised cattle for meat production, and we milled feed, we doctored cattle, we castrated, we did all the things. Moving out here 7 years ago to manage this ranch was a big change. I didn't know that I'd waited my entire life to do this, and it's really been a redeeming experience, and it's not something that I'm willing to give up. As a matter of fact, I'm willing to die on this hill. I will fight for this business, and I will fight for the beef industry, the Western lifestyle. It's redeeming. It brings me a lot of peace and a lot of happiness, despite the issues that we come across day to day. This is a good life. It's not an easy one, but it's a good one.
Absolutely. I believe it is, and it's romanticized in my head for sure that the ranching lifestyle and this, the peaceful, and then you keep using the word redeeming, and that sounds aspirational, like a really, really neat thing. So you kind of mentioned challenges. Tell me about some of those challenges. Weather is one. Forage goes with the weather. The public is another one. We have people that come out here and utilize public land, which is just fine. But sometimes they think they're helping us by opening gates and letting animals into a pasture that they're sitting in front of, or they turn on or off valves that are on or off for a very good reason, thinking that they're helping. Again, it's just part of the deal. And those are small obstacles to overcome. And we're firefighters out here. We wake up and put out whatever fire is lit that day. And I'm not talking about literal fires. I'm just talking about whatever is going wrong. Absolutely. It's my favorite thing to say in probably every podcast is the diversity of a agriculturalist or a rancher. You've got to know meteorology. You got to know soil. You got to be, when you think about a rancher or you think about a cowboy, you see the cowboy hat and you think, oh, he probably knows horses, he probably knows cattle, but you also know soil science, and you also know about seeds, and you also know about weather patterns and La Nina and El Nino and all these things that it takes. That's correct. I tell people we're glorified plumbers because we fix a lot of water lines, and then every once in a while we get to get on a horse and actually be cowboys. But plumbers and fix fencers is 90% of it. People who want to come out and work, and they think they're going to be riding a horse all day, and that's just not the case. It's taking care of the animals, taking care of the ranch, conserving water, making sure that our lines don't leak, improving storage, and rebuilding our dirt tanks so that we can utilize our rainwater when it does rain. It's been exceptionally dry for the last couple of years. It's lush now, which is beautiful. Caring for our pastures in the fashion to where it's environmentally and economically good for the ground and good for the animals, so that we can continue feeding for generations. Oh yeah, and water is everything, right? So we will be able to show pictures of how beautiful the ranch was for the versions that are video. Of course, if you're just listening,
you might head over to YouTube or Instagram or something and see, because it is beautiful right now because you do have all that rain, but then you have to be thinking not about today with all the rain, right? You're thinking about the future.
That's correct.
You have a lot of projects that are just in case there's drought again, or for when there is more drought, right?
Absolutely. And this is the time to do it, is when it rains, is when you put the work in, so that when it doesn't rain, that you have the available feed to give the cattle. We're developing 640 acres of farm ground. We put it in new wells and center pivot sprinklers, and we'll be growing Sudan. We'll be growing permanent pasture, a seed blend that fits with this area of New Mexico, so that when it doesn't rain, we can graze our cattle on the grass that we grew ourselves, and that's part of the sustainability deal. Is these animals deserve every effort that we can possibly put in. And that's our goal.
Oh yeah, and I thought it was interesting too, as we were driving by one of the pivots, you talked about a seed blend, and it was just a cheap seed blend or something, right? Or a value seed blend, you called it, I think. And it was to help the soil, right? And like you said, you do this now so that when you need it to be a really, good forage, it will be, in the soil will recover by having, different nutrients, right?
That is absolutely correct. You deal with the present, but plan for the future.
Yeah, absolutely. The amount you have to deal with that is incredible. So talk about New Mexico's landscapes and the differences in, what you deal with as far as the landscapes go with your ranching.
Yeah, our ranch is fairly vast, and so there's a lot of different landscapes. There are draws that are full of grass. There are fence lines that are driven into rocks. On the top of hills and top of mountains. When they divided ranches back in the day, they basically said from the top of that mountain to the top of that mountain, and those are the fences that we have to fix. And we're either hiking or on horseback, pulling pony mules with all the gear on the back so that we can fix fence. It's extensive. It's extensive amount of work. There's a lot of dry areas. The last couple of years, this ranch looked like the moon. There wasn't a lick of grass on it, and we did a lot of supplemental feeding, protein, hay. We trucked a lot of hay in from out of state, where it was more affordable and more available. And we fed 3 days a week, hauled hay around the ranch because there was no forage.
Oh yeah, because there's issues for everyone when it doesn't rain, right? Or everyone could maybe complain, or maybe anyone could, right? We can all complain about anything. But for a rancher, those cows still have to eat. And if you're ranching and you're expecting those native grasses to come, they're not coming without rain, right? So
that's correct. And even worse than that, our last windy season was so bad that a lot of the seed that fell off of the grass that is out here was buried under 2 feet of below sand. And it's hard for the water to get down that deep, and it's hard for the seeds to sprout through 2 feet of below sand. We were fortunate this year to get almost our annual allotment of rain, but it's the first time in almost 15 years that we've gotten that amount of rain. And it's a blessing, but we have to. I intend to utilize that, let our grass go to seed, so that new varieties are able to grow, and diversify our forage.
Yeah, and that's something maybe I hadn't heard of, just, admittedly, that's the whole purpose, or your current purpose of resting that pasture is so that it goes to seed. And that was the first time I had ever heard that, and it makes sense, and maybe I could have assumed that or could have, but the way you explained it was really neat to me, that you're resting that pasture so it goes to seed so that it will grow more.
Our animals eat what's most palatable, and they're going to eat the new growth first, versus the older grass, and different seeds take different times, different time amounts to germinate. And if that grass, it never goes to seed, it's not going to grow anymore. And being able to rotate pastures and manage the growth and consumption of that grass, also by managing the size of our herd. Ranching fundamentally is managing the size of your herd based on available forage, or supplementing. The last couple of years have been rough. We do get some help from the state, but a lot of our neighbors have liquidated their herds, and you can't buy animals at auction and put them out on a vast ranch and expect them to survive. They won't. They don't know where the water is. They don't know the noxious weeds that they're not supposed to eat, and And same thing with pen raised bulls. They have to be taught. They need that maternal direction that the Brangus animal gives them. I watch Brangus moms push their calves off of a broomsnake or rattleweed, and that is exactly what it takes.
Yeah, well, and I was gonna say, I thought of something too, just for a non-agriculture person listening, because we hope that you're listening, right? We talk about the palatable grass, right? Well, I learned from a spinach farmer in the Salinas Valley a long time ago is that baby spinach is just young spinach, right? And it's just harvested sooner, and that baby spinach is more palatable. So that's why we eat baby spinach a lot. You can also buy regular spinach, but that baby spinach is more palatable. So that's like that new growth, right? If we can compare it to something that
Exactly right.
that we see in the grocery store, we understand. How often are you making decisions on your herd size?
So we gather twice a year, and we base herd size off of available forage. October it was dry, and it had been dry for years, and we held our cards. And we hauled a lot of feed and hauled a lot of water throughout the summer, from October until now. And it paid off. Like I said, a lot of our neighbors have liquidated their herds purely because the grass to purchase isn't available locally, which is why we buy it out of state. And it's either you bite the bullet and pay the bill for the feed, or you liquidate. And especially now with the beef market the way it is, very difficult to restock your ranch, and even more difficult if half of those eat the noxious weeds and don't survive the year.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned you've got 600 head, I think you said, right? If that's okay to say.
We have 600 head now.
Yeah, and so you said you know each of those animals, right? So it's not only hard to start over, but it's also hard. You've built this herd because of the genetics that you like. And when, we talk about genetics, sometimes it sounds scary, but you've just bred these animals based on their temperament, their ability to survive in the desert and all of these things. And so if you have to liquidate, that's a hard start. That's a hard start over. And it's also heartbreaking, right? A lot of ranchers talk about that, right?
It's damn near impossible to come back from liquidating your entire herd. It's not impossible, but it almost is. Making sure that these animals are healthy is a priority. Supplementing their feed, and it was probably 3 years ago. I thought I had a neighbor's animals, and he walked up to the corrals and he said, "That one's mine. That one's not. That one's not." And I said, "How do you know?" And he said, "Because I don't know those animals." And I'm like, "What do you mean you don't know those animals?" And a year later, I was driving to the ranch with my old man, and he goes, "Look at those." And I said, "Those aren't ours." And he goes, "How do you know?" And I go, "Let's go check." And they weren't ours; they were our neighbors. And it was kind of then that I realized exactly what he meant. Without knowing it, I know every single one of these animals because we processed them. I remember them, and they remember me. And we've changed the dynamic of our cattle here, where we're no longer the enemy. When I got here, we'd pull up and they would just take off running, just head high, tail in the air, at a dead run. And now with a little bit of cake and streamlining, they're not cooperative. I won't say that. But if an animal runs when we're gathering, and we have to rope them down, it seems irresponsible to make my cowboys chase that cow every year. That one cow will take three will take 10, 10 will take the rest of the herd. If they have to rope one down, it goes to the sale barn. If it hooks a horse a couple times, it goes to the sale barn. Then we've still got some track stars out there that will just put their big alpha females that will put their head in the air, their tail in the air, and just take all of them with them. But it's a process. And let's say 2 years ago is when I kind of started to see the animals going to where they needed to go and the direction that they needed to go. And we use some of the best cowboys on the planet. They're Charo cowboys, and we use a helicopter pilot who is also a cowboy and a rancher. And he is tenacious. And without my team, I could not do this. This isn't a one-man show. It is an absolute team effort. And the credit goes to them as much as it does to me.
I love that. That's an important quality. And then they're still animals, right? So that's all I kept thinking is they're still animals. And then you said cake broke. And, sometimes I think my job in this podcast is to try and help people understand the lingo when I actually know, because that's not all the time. But the cake is like a sweet feed, cattle like, right?
It's a cottonseed cake pellet. It's about the size of a half a cigar, and it's like a cow Cheeto.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
It's a snack. It's sugar, and it makes it easier so that for you to look at your animals from a pickup, and they're all surrounding you. You can tell which ones are sick. You can see the new unbranded babies, which gives you an idea of the rest of your next week. If you need to rope cows down and doctor them, or if you need to stop and brand a calf, as opposed to looking at them through binoculars from an eighth of a mile away.
Yeah. The cake trucks are pretty identifiable. Like a pickup in the front, and then in the back, it's got a big box full of cake pellets.
Absolutely, and you turn a siren on, or you play the song, or even just the idle of my particular pickup, and they will come out of the tall grass, getting loose, and they're running, making a dust cloud towards this pickup.
Yeah. And then they call it cake broke, right?
Yeah.
Which I think my husband could make some jokes about me being cake broke too. I think I can. And he fires up a grill, and I'm like, "Oh, hey, I'm here. Did you need help?" Yeah,
100%.
So we've talked about the land and the livestock. What about the what's maybe one thing most people don't know about raising beef in New Mexico?
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
This episode of Behind the Burger is brought to you by the New Mexico Beef Council. At NMBC, we're all about supporting New Mexico's ranchers and bringing the story of beef to life, from pasture to your plate. If you're enjoying these conversations, be sure to follow us on social media to keep the journey going. You'll find us on Instagram and TikTok at NMBeef, and on Facebook at NM Beef Council. We're sharing ranch life, beef tips, recipes, and the people behind the plate. Come be part of the story.
If you've never worked on a ranch before, there isn't a lot, You know what I mean? A lot of people think that their steak comes from the grocery store. And the reality is that it takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of animal husbandry. It takes love. Probably one of the hardest parts about my job is having to euthanize an animal that you spent 3 weeks doctoring. And you threw all 3 darts at the same time to get this animal up, and it still fails. That being said, when you do that and one gets up and recovers, there's some redeeming value in that too.
Absolutely. And I think we should say too that I've found this to be true with a lot of people, but definitely with you. You are an animal lover.
I am an animal lover. Moving out here taught me, I learned more compassion for these animals. They provide a decadent lifestyle and a good life. And we owe it to them to do the very best we can. Healthy animals are breeding animals, and it's not a single faceted solution. It is always multifaceted. There's a dozen things you have to do, and you can't do one, you can't do 3, and expect to succeed.
Absolutely. And I just think that's an important part is knowing that you're an animal lover. You've got, dogs, you've got donkeys, and I think there was a goat or a sheep or something, maybe a doll sheep or something out there. And then you've got your, pasture pets of mini Brahmas and even a what's it called, a Highlander.
Yep.
And I just think that's a really neat thing people should understand, that and that's what makes you care for animals so much, right?
It does. And like I said, I know these animals. I've known them for years. And as far as the miniatures go, we have like a small petting zoo basically, and there isn't a single child that comes out here that doesn't remember their first time being on a farm and hand feeding some animals. And the miniatures are more approachable sometimes, and they remember that, and that's an experience for them. And almost all of them want to come back out here, and that's a good way to get kids introduced to this life, for the next generation. And it is possible. When I moved to New Mexico from California, I heard things like that long hair ain't gonna make it. But my favorite thing is to be underestimated. That's perfect for me. I like being the underdog and fighting up.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that personality trait, and I try to resemble that too. I've said I've been underestimated before. I'll be underestimated again, but we'll prove them wrong. We'll figure it out. We'll find a way.
I've hunted my entire life, and I feel like any good hunter is also a conservationist. And any decent meat eater should also have a level of animal husbandry, because that's where it comes from.
Yep, absolutely. That's an important thing. Well, just since you brought up hunters and then we talked about the public earlier, I know I asked you this earlier, but if a public land user is well, and maybe we described the ranch is, some private and some public, but then how do you hope that someone treats your land and your operation when they're using the public land that, that they do, right? They have access to?
I expect people to follow the rules that are set forth by BLM and state, which, no doing donuts in the middle of the pasture, follow the 2-track roads that are established, and have some reverence and respect for the land and the animals, and the stewards of the land. And I feel like most people do. And if they don't, I could see them. Yeah. And I go out and talk to everybody. If I see somebody parked or hunting, I pull up, make sure everything's okay, and let them know who I am and what we're doing out here. And I think that the most of the people that I've run into appreciate the change that's happened on this ranch in the last 7 years, and can see the effort, not only in the headquarters, but the quality of the animals, and how healthy they are.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I mean, that's obviously just great advice for life. You should always, stop and talk to people and be respectful of where you are, but especially in nature, just understand that there's more going on. And most ranches in New Mexico specifically are some land owned by the rancher, some land owned by Bureau of Land Management, which is a federally owned land and leased to the rancher, and then some even state leases, right? And that's, a complicated thing to understand that is definitely over my head in some ways, but yeah, just be respectful because there are cows there, and and the cows are an important part of the ecosystem, and an important part of why those lands stay public, right?
Yeah, and I've tried, even this week we're replacing wire fences that are frequented with steel gates, because not every bicyclist or razor driver, side-by-side driver will close a wire gate. So making it easier for them to do what needs to be done, which is come through a closed gate and shut it behind you, is easier. You know what I mean? Trying to make it the ease of the use of public to benefit me, which is if I make the gate easier to close, there's a better chance that they're going to close it.
Well, it's very kind of you and very, prudent in a lot of ways. And then I just will say, reiterate that if you're on public land and there's a gate that's open, leave it open. If you're on public land and there's a gate that's closed, close the gate behind you. Yes, ma'am. If you see water on, leave it on. If you see water off, leave it off. If you have questions, find the rancher, find the headquarters. There's, plenty of easy ways to find a ranch house. Leave a note. If you're worried there's a water on or something that looks off, leave a note and tell a rancher. Because I think, if we can all be respectful of each other, it's, a great way to live.
Agree 100%.
Yeah. So what's your favorite part of your job? Or of your lifestyle even?
I think that my favorite part is probably the animal husbandry, and the love for these animals, and watching them produce and be happy based on the effort that I've put in. Like I said, it is redeeming. Being able to drive around this ranch and see green grass and see happy cows with their heads down eating at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, there isn't anything better.
Absolutely. And I know we talked about this earlier, but you've followed in footsteps of, generational being in the beef industry. And it's hard, but it's a choice that's made every day to keep doing it, to keep waking up, to, break ice if it freezes down here, if it, all the things that you have to do, you have to wake up and keep doing it. What makes you keep going?
It's like I said, it's a love for this lifestyle and wanting to perpetuate it for generations. There was a popular TV show recently that said something like, in 2 generations, your job isn't going to exist. And my answer to that is not if I have anything to do about it.
Excellent rebuttal, and I did love that particular show made it cool to be a cowboy again. That is a neat thing, and to see horses and cattle on television, not always the perfect depiction of the ranching industry, but to see cattle and horses on a major television show, I know was a special part for a lot of people.
Yeah, definitely. I think in my lifetime, I've watched the popularity of move to the city, of being a city guy, change, and everybody in the city wants to move out and be a rancher, and go for it. But it's not easy. It's a lot of work, and it will run your life, but it will be more enjoyable. There's ups and there's downs, but such is life.
Absolutely, there is sacrifice involved to have this type of lifestyle. A lot of sacrifice.
Absolutely.
Even I think we were talking to Katie about Wi-Fi and issues with that. There are so many sacrifices, and so we appreciate what you do, because that means I can go to the restaurant and I can go to the grocery store and buy beef, right?
Absolutely.
So the final question I have, unless you had anything else you wanted to add as we were kind of talking about it, anything else you wanted to include?
Be kind to ranchers. Treat them with respect, and you will receive respect back.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely agree with that and can vouch for that. So what is your favorite way to eat beef, or even like a favorite unique beef recipe?
So I'm sure a lot of guys will say ribeye is their favorite cut. I stopped buying ribeye about 2 years ago and started buying a brevet, which is a cut from the back belly side in front of the back leg. And it is phenomenal. It's marbled like brisket,
okay,
but cooks like a steak, and it is phenomenal. And I have a couple of different ways that I like to cook the steak. The brevet I like to cook hot and fast, to medium rare. I use a seasoning called Hardcore Carnivore Black. And if you cook steaks, you need to get yourself a shaker of that. It's phenomenal. I also like to sous vide a steak or a New York. It's an immersion cooker, and you can impart flavors with lemon, rosemary, thyme that you can't otherwise get into the steak. You use the cooker the submersion cooker to do that, and then you pull all the salad off of it, and then cook it for a minute on each side, sear it, and it's good to go. Man,
that is quite the culinary expertise over here. Sounds like
I'm a back in a heart.
No. We love to eat, and that I think that's that seasoning you're talking about is literally black, right?
It is. They use activated charcoal in it.
Yeah.
And it's all the stuff you're going to put on your steak anyway. It's salt, pepper, garlic, and onions. But if you want like a nice bark on a brisket, or even on the brevet cut, it's wonderful. It will look burnt when it comes out because the seasoning is black, but it is phenomenal.
I have one of those sitting in my cabinets because I was in Clovis and went to Foot Family Meats, and they sold me on it. They said, you got to have this, and they sell out constantly.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Now I got to go home and use it. What the heck? It's been sitting there.
It is phenomenal. I asked a Michelin star chef how he cooks his steaks, and that's what he told me, the seasoning that he uses, the immersion cooker, and then like the coal stacks that you start a Weber with. Get that started, burn it down, put a grate over it, and then sear the heck out of the steak.
Well, now I'm hungry. Well, surely we need to get out of your hair. Thank you so much for the important role you play in the industry and providing safe, wholesome beef for the world. Thank you for the podcast, and thank you for hosting us at your beautiful home. We're sitting at a historic bar. This is one of those things where we'll talk about this for a long time. So thank you for hosting us.
Thank you guys for coming out, giving me the opportunity to talk to you guys. And thank you for what you guys do, promoting New Mexico beef, the New Mexico beef industry, and highlighting the efforts that ranchers put in to animal husbandry and taking care of the land, and providing great American beef.
Absolutely. It is an absolute honor to tell the story. And thank you again.
The honor's mine. Thank you.
Behind the Burger is a podcast produced by the New Mexico Beef Council with the goal of telling the stories of the cattlemen and cattlewomen of the New Mexico beef industry. Thank you for joining us for today's episode. If you would like more information, please visit nmbeef.com. Whether it be a burger, a steak, or another beef dish, we hope you are enjoying beef at your next meal.